Charles Darwin, Faith, Empire, and the Curiosity of a Child. The year was 1809. In that same year, two things were born. One was a child, the other was an idea. The child's name was Charles Darwin. The idea was that species were not fixed. At that time in England, such a thought was almost considered heresy. 19th century England. The Industrial Revolution was rising, the empire was expanding, and the church was powerful. At that time, the world was seen as a fixed order created by God. Every living species was believed to have been created exactly as it was, and to have remained unchanged. Because change itself was considered a great sin, Darwin was born into such a world. A wealthy family, an intellectual environment. His grandfather, Erasmus Darwin, had written that living beings might have changed over time. His father was a powerful doctor, logical, controlling. But young Darwin's mind was not interested in lessons. What fascinated him most was nature. He collected insects, he observed birds, he kept stones, shells, and bones. He was not just looking with curiosity, he was comparing. Of course, the school system quickly labeled him as lazy. One day, his father said to him, "You care about nothing but dogs, guns, and rats. You will be a disgrace to your family." Those words hurt Darwin, but he did not change himself for the sake of his family. In 1825, he went to Edinburgh to study medicine. The operating room, screams, no anesthesia. During the surgery of a child, he stepped outside to catch his breath, and he never went back in. Medicine was not for him. This time, he was sent to Cambridge. The goal, to become a priest. But here is the real story. Darwin came closest to his most radical idea while studying for the clergy. At Cambridge, he met the botanist John Stevens Henslow. Henslow did not only show him plants, he taught him how to observe, how to doubt. And then Darwin received a letter. A ship was about to set sail to map the coasts of South America. A 5-year voyage of exploration. The ship's name, HMS Beagle. When the offer reached Darwin, it was not an official position. He would receive no salary. He would simply observe. For Darwin, was this not an extraordinary opportunity? His father immediately opposed the idea. "A waste of time," he said. But Darwin's uncle immediately supported him. Permission was granted. December 27th, 1831. The Beagle set sail, and the world would never be the same again. The revolution of nature that challenged the limits of time. The Beagle voyage was not easy. Seasickness, months without setting foot on land, loneliness. But when they reached the coasts of South America, Darwin's mind opened. The rainforests of Brazil, an abundance of trees, animals. For Darwin, it was extraordinary, a place where life seemed to explode. The pampas of Argentina, gigantic fossils. Wasn't it magnificent? One day, he discovered the fossil of a giant mammal, a species of giant sloth. But it closely resembled species that were still alive. What had happened that it became extinct? Why was it similar yet different? Darwin's mind was filled with questions. Then, in the Andes Mountains, he found seashells at what we call the summit of a mountain, marine life. This was proof that the Earth had changed. In 1835, a great earthquake struck Chile. The land rose several meters. Darwin understood something profound. Nature does not work through sudden miracles. It works slowly, patiently, through cumulative change. Then they arrived, the Galápagos Islands. At first glance, ordinary islands, but in truth, a turning point in the history of science. On each island, strangely, there were different finches, different beaks, different ways of feeding. Even the shells of the tortoises changed from island to island. It was extraordinary. Living beings from the same origin, yet in different environments, seemed to have developed new traits. Darwin still had not reached a final conclusion. But when he returned to England, the real revolution would begin. The dangerous idea. In 1836, he returned to England. He was now recognized by many. But there were still questions in his mind that had not been answered. Were species changing? For years he reviewed his notes. He compared his specimens. Then he read a book. Its author, Thomas Robert Malthus. Malthus argued, population increases geometrically, resources increase arithmetically. Therefore, struggle is inevitable. Something shifted in Darwin's mind. Living beings reproduce in great numbers. Resources are limited. It is extremely difficult for all of them to survive. Therefore, those with advantageous traits survive, and they pass on those traits. This was not something done consciously. It was a system shaped by nature, its name, natural selection. But Darwin was afraid, because this idea implied something radical. Humans, too, might share a common ancestor with other living beings. For the religious understanding of that time, this was devastating. For 20 years he remained silent, until a letter arrived in 1858. A young naturalist, Alfred Russel Wallace, had developed a similar theory. Darwin could no longer wait. In 1859, he published his book, On the Origin of Species. The first edition sold out on the very first day. The scientific world was in shock. Some stood behind his idea, others mocked him. In caricatures, he was drawn as a monkey, but there was no turning back now. Humanity looks in the mirror. In 1871, Darwin dropped his second great bombshell, the descent of man. He began to argue that humans, too, emerged through the evolutionary process. Now the issue was no longer just birds. The issue was humanity itself. This idea removed humanity from the center. It made humans a part of nature, and with this, the foundation of modern biology was laid. Today, genetics, DNA, adaptation, antibiotic resistance, all of them move along the path Darwin opened. Darwin died in 1882, and interestingly, this man, whose ideas were once mocked and called heretical, was buried in Westminster Abbey beside kings. Darwin simply observed quietly, took notes, compared, thought patiently, and he told us this: change is inevitable. Those who fail to adapt perish.